Druidcraft is more than just a way to practice magic. It's more than just a way to conceive of the divine. Craft really is a path to freedom, a path of liberation, a path that teaches us one of the most vital lessons we can learn in life and spirituality, that we have the ability to connect, to interrelate with the world, and to discover life and its meaning and purpose for ourselves. The great power of Druidcraft is in how it liberates us to seek our own path with a common language that we can use to discuss that path with others. So let's talk about the last chapter in Philip Carr-Gomm's wonderful book, Druidcraft, as we discuss the ways of freedom, walking down creation's paths. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I am a Christopagan Druid and priest of Bridget.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian. I'm a Christopagan Druid and sous chef to the Dogdo.
Today, we're going to be talking about the final chapter in Druidcraft and discussing what Druidcraft means for us going forward. And by us, I hope that includes you as well. I hope you've enjoyed this trip. And this isn't the last episode we're doing on the book, but as we're entering this final chapter, this final phase, it's, I think, important for us to start having some reflections on how we are going to integrate these ideas and these practices and this worldview into our daily life. But before we get into all that, if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe, follow, whatever the terminology happens to be on, whatever the app is you're listening to us on. We do original Christopagan and Druid episodes Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss a thing. We've got a lot of really cool stuff coming up. All right, let's just get into it. Yeah, this chapter, I always find oddly melancholy. And I think it's because he starts with the whole, and now it's time to leave Avernell. And I'm like, I don't want to leave Avernell. I don't want to. Can we stay? Can we stay? And I don't know. It's a weird wistfulness that I almost immediately get when getting to this final chapter in the book.
Yeah, I too find myself in a very wistful place. That was a neat way to wrap up the book, and kind of through evoking those emotions. It's like me too. I'm like, I don't want it to be over. And then I remember, oh, wait, it's not over. This is the beginning of the journey. Life is cyclical.
But also, it's such a beautiful book that I really wish it was longer. I love the language that Philip Carr-Gomm wrote the book with and everything else. But I don't want to get into book review territory. We obviously love the book, or we wouldn't have picked it to spend these last few weeks digging down deep into it. There's something about this idea specifically of Druidry and Wicca as pathways to liberation that I find really moving. I know my draw to Druidry was rooted in this kind of tug that I had on my heart to reconnect to my ancestors, to reconnect to my past, to reconnect to a culture that I had lost. And so I started seeking out at a very young age. I got a copy of, and I don't recommend this book. It's not really a good book on the subject, but it was called Celtic Magick by DJ Conway. It was fine for what it was. I would not recommend it. But I remember reading that book, and this is the first time I saw names like Manannan MacLear, the Dagda, the Morgan, Bridget, Angus, and all the rest, right? They stirred something deep down in me and made me want to find more. They made me want to seek out and learn more about this culture that I had been cut off from. There are a lot of ways to talk about that cutting off, be it the colonization that happened in Ireland or just that shift that happened when my ancestors moved over to this country and assimilated to this homogenized American culture and really lost a lot of the flavor that they had had. Though I'm very fortunate in that my great-grandparents still had a lot of what I would later realize is Celtic spirit to them. But I didn't receive it as such. I always felt like a person without a home, without a culture to belong to. And that's how this led me to my own personal liberation, right? Because I felt adrift, like I wasn't really a part of much of anything. I've talked in previous episodes and over on the blog at creationspaths.com about my struggles within mainline Christianity. And I never really felt at home there. I never really felt at home in the Golden Dawn. It's been really hard for me to find a place where I felt like I belong. I found that in Druidry. I found that in Irish paganism. I found that in the fairy craft that I also practice. I'm starting there because I think that sense of belonging in many ways is key to liberation. Because I think you have to have roots somewhere if you're going to stand strong. Prior to me finding a place where I could really set my roots in, I just drifted about. I floated from place to place, and there, but by the grace of God, I didn't continue in the Christian nationalism that I grew up in. But I understand why people are in that. It's because it gives them a sense of rootedness. It's not really rooted. Like when you're shackled down, you feel like you're on firm ground because you don't recognize the weight of the shackles holding you anymore. But it's not really roots. Getting to this place where I could find this liberation for myself, I just want to share it with others.
It's a very important aspect to keep in mind because liberation, freedom, to easily recognize it, they generally require from a thing. So you have to be rooted in something to be able to understand or be able to even feel the oppression or the shackling, as you put it, because being anchored is being anchored and the sensation is the same, but to be able to differentiate between being anchored because you're shackled to a thing and enslaved to it versus rooted in because you chose, you want this, and you actually chose it and it is part of you is a different foundation to come from. And it's important to have that so you can see the other, so you can see when that choice is not there or
And
it's
we,
false.
yeah, when you don't know what it feels like to feel rooted, fetters feel rooting. They feel
Yeah.
like they're, because you think your roots hold you down, they tie you down, they tie you into something. And you can be tied in with a rope or with a chain and get that false sense, especially if you don't know that there's any other way to be rooted into something. This is the difference I learned in my gradual growth into Druidry and Irish paganism.
I think this is also where another type of fetter comes in, where, especially in today's society, a lot of people tend to be distracted by busy. There's a lot of stuff going on in our lives. We have access to so much data and stimulus that we end up very busy. That business in and of itself becomes a shackle of its own type, whereas it doesn't necessarily anchor you, but it keeps you from having any roots.
Yeah.
It keeps you blown about in the air, preventing any roots from happening. I think this is where a lot of people have this in their lives, but may not necessarily see it. They just, and I think this is where a lot of this call to Druidry comes from because people, they feel it. They feel this need for a simpler time, this desire to go and just run away from it all and be in nature. That, of course, progresses into Druidry and becomes an interesting path in, and I think a reason for its rising popularity. But it's in reality just people just needing to take pause, take a moment, take a breath, recognize that they're being kept too busy and need to take a moment and find out what they actually want to choose to root into to have as their foundation.
Yeah, I think that's what's really powerful about the 8 festivals of the year. That's not that we don't celebrate others. As Christopagans, we, of course, are also celebrating Easter. We're celebrating various saints' days and stuff as well in our practice. But those having those 8 days, roughly 6 weeks apart, every 6 weeks, so every month and a half, you are reminded to pause, to take a
Yeah.
break, to step back, to enter into this contemplation, to realign yourself with life and with the world. And that is actually, to me, how the rooting takes place. Because the brilliance of the 8 festivals that we've talked about, and as we're heading towards the next one with the equinox coming up, it's important for us to take this time to sit back and continue to clear out the rubbish from underneath the plant to make sure that our roots are good, that we're well fed and taken care of. I this is a holiday that's coming up I've struggled with, this spring equinox. I've struggled with a lot because I've not connected to any of the imagery with it until recently. I finally got a copy of Ross Nichols' book of Druidry. And there's just a one word note next to this holiday where it says Angus. That's it. It just says Angus. He's just listed there. And all of a sudden, I understood the spring equinox. Like, I understood this holiday. I understood this festival. I understood how to connect into it in a way that I never really have before. In that, I have all this excitement now for the equinox coming up. And see, that's a root. That's another root that finally got to go down in that one word, because it's literally just one word. He doesn't explain what Angus has to do with the spring equinox. None of that. It's just this one word. It just says Angus. Doesn't even say Angus Mac Og or anything else. It's just Angus. But it gave me another root. And that again is being rooted is being rooted is liberation. Knowing where you stand, where you come from, where you are coming from, where you are living from is how you actually act as a liberated being in this world. You were mentioning earlier how usually we have to define liberation as liberation from. This is one of the reasons why, when we did our episode on giving up authoritarianism for Lent, I wanted to go into the 4 freedoms, because what I love about that is it's the 2 positive freedoms and the 2 negative freedoms. We should be free to do things, free to act, to speak, to live, to love, to worship, to speak, to assemble. There are a lot of positive freedoms there that I think get lost, because that's how we get trapped in other systems where they talk about our freedom from. What burdened me about my life in evangelical Christianity is the idea of freedom there was freedom from sin. The problem with freedom from sin means you can never make a mistake, because even within within evangelical Christianity, you're taught that sin is missing the mark, but it also is like this stain on you and your character and everything, because that's where they go too far. So if you're going to be free from missing the mark, that means you can never make a mistake. You can never mess up, and you get lost in this world of you have to live perfectly, and nobody lives perfectly.
No,
none of us do that. And to put that expectation on somebody is vile and cruel and wicked. And what I love,
Jesus said, "Don't put that expectation on me."
why do you call me good?
Yeah, he's like, "Don't call me good."
There's no good but your Father who is in heaven. Yeah, even Jesus is like, what? Don't put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. What are you doing? And that's not present in the ideas of Druidry, because especially in Druidry, the way Ross Nichols framed Druidry, and I really do come from the more Ross Nichols school. I've read Yolo Morgano. We talk about his work a lot because I'm also inspired by the tradition of modern as well as the legends of the Druids. But the way that Ross Nichols really framed Druidry is it is that art of the storyteller, that art of the creative. And I don't think what people are looking for in their spirituality anymore is to passively sit and passively listen to somebody tell them what to do, and then to just go off and forget what the person said 5 minutes later. And I know that might sound weird to somebody who does a daily podcast on spirituality, but if you notice, most of what we're talking about here, the vast majority of what we talk about is here are some things to do. Here's some things to try. Here are some things to put in your life. Because to me, and I've said this a lot, but spirituality is a technology. It is a machine that you learn how to build and how to do maintenance on and how to constantly improve. Now, your spiritual machine and mine might not look the same, but you can see that we're of a similar design lineage if we're both building it in this Druid way. I can see the Jewish elements in my spiritual machine and the Christian elements and the Buddhist elements, but they've all found a place within my spirituality. They've rooted in, like we talked about from Dion Fortune, that you have to not just flit around and find little bits here, there, and yonder, but you have to bring it together into something that flows out of you, that is who you are. And that's really the invitation of Druidry. It's not just for me to read the story of Angus and care. We've done that during this series where we talked about the ways of love. And of course, I'm going to be thinking about that story when we go into the spring equinox. It's not just about memorializing that story. It's about retelling it. It's about telling the new stories. It's about finding ways to connect to this spirit and the energy of Angus and Care, and finding ways to reconnect to this energy of love, of life, of the newness of life. Remember, the story of Angus and Care isn't just about him finding his true love. It's about complete transformation of the self. As he runs towards her, remember, he reaches his hands out and his arms become wings, and together they take flight as swans. It's a story about transformation and change and becoming something more than you already are. He went from being an earthbound creature to one that could take flight and live in the air. He became master of all four elements. He can walk on the earth, he can swim in the sea, and he can fly in the air. He became master of all three elements in this story through the power of love. And when people tell you're reading into the story, the ancients who wrote those stories down probably weren't thinking in that way. They may or may not have been, but it's not my job to be tied to what they thought. It's to bring those ideas into the present, into now, into a way that works for us now. I forgot who said it, and I've been trying to find the quote because they were quoting somebody else. But I was watching a podcast about a month ago. I heard this beautiful phrase: the tradition can have a seat at the table, but it can't have a veto. I love that because that's truth. Yeah, you can bring the tradition in. The tradition can come in. It can sit down at the table with you. It can have a voice, but it can't have a veto because I'm not living in Iron Age Ireland. So Iron Age Ireland doesn't get a veto over my modern 2025 life.
I would also think that if they're actually bards, I know that's controversial language to put in there, but if they're actually bards, bards are about telling stories to teach. Teaching isn't just, here, I've handed you information, you consume it, you regurgitate it on a test, there you've been taught. That is not teaching. Teaching is about working with the knowledge. Since their tools of teaching is stories, the whole point is to work with the stories, to learn, to grow, to evolve, finding new and discovering new ways of seeing or interpreting those stories or applying them into the current context, breathe life back into those stories. Any bard would be extra proud of any story, especially one that lasts through the test of time and continues to teach and inform in modern context. So I would be like, yeah, I would actually be happy for that. Because like you said, it's a vote at the table, not a veto. It's teaching not as in, here is a specific list of facts, 1+1 = 2. It's teaching as in, here's something to work with, to play with, to gain wisdom through the knowledge plus the experience of that story.
My experiences are different from Brian's, and his are different from mine, and yours are different from ours. Those differences in experience change the way we tell the story. In this chapter, Philip tells the story of Cormac and Manannan Maclear and the well with 5 streams throwing blood from it. And each of those streams is one of the 5 senses. And Manannan tells him, the truly wise drink from all 5 streams and from the well. They drink from all 5 senses and from the well of wisdom. That, to me, is as good as any shorthand explanation of what Druidry is. It's learning to drink from sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. Learning to take in the world. Learning to take in all of the good, the bad, the everything that is, and bringing it into this well of wisdom, of spirit, and making sense of it all. That is Druidry. Unlike other paths, Druidcraft doesn't ask you to not believe your lying eyes or to ignore the real life that you live 24/7. Druidcraft tells you to take all of that into consideration and ask yourself, but is there more? Is there something that I've been missing? Is there something that I have not been paying attention to? Is there something that I have not been noticing? And in looking into those gaps, finding what is lost, what's been missed, what could make things better. One of my great spiritual practices is if a friend of mine comes over to the house and has some food with them that I don't like, I always ask, can I try a little bit of that? Because I've grown wise enough. This is my sip from the well of wisdom that I've gotten over the years to know that my tastes change. There are things that I love and enjoy now that I didn't used to. There are things that are my favorites now that I used to not be able to stand. There are also things that I used to love that, they're fine, have the same passion for them that I used to. And that's okay. But if I'm going to be wise, if I'm going to actually practice wisdom, I need to try just a little bit. Maybe I like this now. Maybe this is something that I am robbing. Maybe this is something that I am robbing myself of the enjoyment of, because when I was younger, I didn't have the palate to enjoy it. I didn't have the life experience to enjoy it. I just didn't know. That, for me, is the heart of Druidry.
I think this is also a point where I get to reference a part of the chapter that I know Charlie's been waiting for me to get to. That's when he talks about how you're in the kitchen, you're not in the restaurant. The imperial religions in particular have you be in the restaurant. You go in, you sit down, it's very passive. You might order a few things, but it's all delivered to you. You partake and you leave. That's the restaurant experience. In this case, in Druidry and Druidcraft, you're in the kitchen. You're engaged in the full process of the food that is being eaten. You're prepping the ingredients. You're seeing where that food comes from. You're assembling it together and combining it in ways that are magical. And then you're getting to enjoy that food and drink both. And when you're in the kitchen, yes, you can cook with your eyes, cook with touch, the sense of touch, touching it. A lot of people I find stop at that. And once again, in Druidcraft, you need to drink from all five. It's like when I'm in the kitchen, I'm not only sight and touch, I have smell, hearing. I get teased often for talking to my food. I get teased actually for being like Bob from Bob's Burger, but I can hear when certain parts of the food are ready. I can smell certain aspects as they're getting close to ready and when they cross over into being ready, using all those senses and pulling from the wisdom from the experiences, knowledges that have been collected up. And that's the same thing in all of Druidcraft. It is using that in every aspect of our lives to make it a deeper, richer experience.
This is something that worries me when I see a lot of what happens on WitchTube and Witch Talk and on social media, where it's almost like these liberating spiritual paths. They know they can't put us back in the restaurant. Some people are trying, right? You don't have to do the magic. Just pay me. I'll do the magic for you. I'll do the spell for you.
Yeah.
Just give me $20. I'll do the spell for you. And I have thoughts. I have thoughts and feels.
Yeah.
I have thoughts. I don't think that's necessarily bad, but I have thoughts. That's putting people back in the restaurant. But they are reforming these paths into a cafeteria where they're limiting the scope of how people can conceive of the path in that, here's our prosperity magic here. We've got our home magic here. We've got our green magic here. We've got, and they're breaking it up into all the little trays on the smorgasbord.
I'd like to say, actually, off that analogy, it's more like packet cooking. You're doing some of the work, but pretty much when you open everything out of a box and put it into a pan or just put it into some boiling water and then serve,
it's still cooking.
It's cooking. Congratulations. I hope it's a gateway to getting into it deeper.
I think they're getting even less than that because it's here's the template for your spell. Here's the color candles to get, like, they're literally basically inviting people up to the salad bar to pick out what they want to put it on the tray. It's very pick one from column A, one from column B, one from column C, one from column D. Congratulations, you have a spell now.
Fast casual.
Yeah, it's very buffet fast casual. Like, it's getting us back towards the restaurant. I understand, especially new people to the craft, wanting a little bit more simplicity and a little bit more clarity, but we need to be careful that we're not putting people back into the restaurant. The liberation that we get from any of these pagan paths, whether it's the Christopaganism that we practice or anything else is this knowledge that we, to a certain degree, are masters of our own fate, and we are not dependent upon or reliant upon any spiritual leaders, we don't have priests between us and the divine. My role as a priest of Bridget is not to be the go between y'all and Bridget. My role as a priest of Bridget is to work in her service. So that's doing the creative work that I do. That's making sure that I'm doing the creative work that I'm called to, and that I am helping other people with their creative work so that they too can enter into that forge and make what they need to make. My job is not to be a go between her and the world. Do you see what I'm saying? That's the difference between pagan priesthoods and a lot of other priesthoods. We don't stand in between. We are working in service to the ones that we have taken our priesthood vows to. And so I don't want people to have to come to me for anything related to Bridget. Bridget's right there. You can talk to her. You can have a relationship with her. And my relationship with her should not have any effect on your relationship. You get what I'm saying? And that's where we need to be careful that we're not slipping and sliding into these older models. And we're keeping this open freedom in there that people can experience and find these experiences for themselves. And this is also how community happens. My experience with Lilith is different from a lot of other people's experiences with Lilith. And I have a couple friends who are probably listening right now. Hello, you know who you are. That when we started talking, I realized had the same experiences with Lilith that I do. And that kind of bonded us together a little bit closer, because that tells me that we are riding on that same energetic current. That's what those things are for. It's not because the way that we talk about Lilith or experience Lilith is better or superior or the only way to experience Lilith. Because honestly, I could see seeing her as the scorned woman, as this force of anger and rage. I can see that. I can see all of that in there. That is not the relationship that I have had with her. I've had very much an experience of mother of the outcasts with Lilith. And so I would never try to enforce or superimpose my beliefs on others. That's the liberation, the freedom that we get through practices like this. And you notice we tell you our points of view, and then we always try to encourage you to find yours. And that may feel daunting. Oh, now I have to do all this work to find my own answer to this question. And honestly, it's not that you have to go do this work. It's that you get to do this work. You don't have to go, Charlie said it, so I guess it has to be true. Oh, one, I get names wrong sometimes. I cite the wrong book sometimes. I am as fallible as the next human being. So never take anything that I say as 100% anything. And that's true for everybody. But also, my experience is different from yours. So just because I tell you about my experience with the other crowd, what I'm doing with my fetch work, any of that doesn't mean that you will have the same experiences that I do. One, because you have a different fetch than I do. My fetch is my fetch. Yours may not be the same kind of relationship, but you'll only know that if you do the work. And the nice thing is, it is work that helps you to be more yourself and more in line with your own heart and what you want to make out of this life. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope that you've been enjoying the series. I actually have another series planned that we're going to be talking about in just a little bit, where we're going to go into Druidry again and kind of dig in deeper into some of the roots. So we're going to be continuing along these lines. So stay tuned for that. I would love to know how you have experienced this path. If this is the first time you've ever studied Druidry or Druidcraft, how are you connecting with it? Also, don't forget, we have a Q&A episode coming up. So if you have any questions, please send them in. We will either answer them on that episode, or if they come in too late, if you're like, I look to the Q&A episode's always up, we answer questions on the show all the time. So don't forget, you can always put a question down there and we will try to either answer it there in a reply to you, or as an episode of the show to help if it needs a lot more detail. And we'll let you know in the comments then. Oh, this is going to have to be a full episode, but here's a little bit, and we'll get to the episode as soon as we can. But I'd love to know your experience with all this. If you're listening to us on YouTube or Spotify, you can leave a comment right there. If you're listening to us anywhere else, even if they say that you can leave a comment, they don't let us know. So we will have no idea that you did that. So go ahead and leave the comment there anyway, because engagement is magic. And then head over to creationspaths.com, click on chat, and you can leave a message for us there. We will be able to see it and get back to you and be able to help you with whatever your problems are. While you're there, you got a few dollars you can pass our way. We offer monthly and annual memberships. Thank you to all of our members. You can also support us on Patreon and Ko-fi. I am C.E. Dorset on both, or you can support us through the Cash App hashtag Creations Paths. Thank you to everybody who helps us out. You really do help us keep the lights on, the roof over our head, and food on our table. But if anything that we've done has helped you out, or you think it would help out others, please share it with them, because that helps us out more than you could possibly know. All right, as we are heading out, I thought we would say a little prayer to Manannan Maclir. Manannan, who, of course, is so swift it runs across the top of the seas, who guides souls as they journey into the dark places and through the lands of mist and shadow. Help us as we walk this path to find our way, to sail our ships right through all of the crack and all of the dangerous seas that could snare us and try to pull us down. Help us to find our way in this strange world, that we might ever live in the land of the young. Amen.
Amen.